Right now on Morning News Now, standoff at sea. The U.S. military boards another tanker suspected of smuggling Iranian oil in the Strait of Hormuz as the U.S. and Iran remain deadlocked on a deal to end the war. President Trump ordering the military to, quote, shoot and kill any Iranian boats caught laying mines in the strait. We'll bring you the latest on the Middle East conflict as Trump announces an extension of the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. Plus, cashing in on classified information, a U.S. Special Forces soldier is arrested after making hundreds of thousands by placing wagers on the raid that captured Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. We'll tell you which online prediction market he used to do it and the charges he's now facing. Also this morning, a big shift at big tech. Microsoft and Meta move to cut thousands of jobs as they announce new plans to spend big on artificial intelligence, citing greater productivity levels. Why the companies say it's just the beginning of the shift toward AI integration. And finally this hour, you've heard of ChatGPT, but what about PlantGPT? If you struggle to keep your houseplants alive, wondering if they have too much water or not enough sunlight, this is for you. We're going to tell you how a group of college students is using AI to help your plants communicate and why it could eventually help farmers. That's all coming up later this hour. Good morning. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe is off today. Thank you very much for starting your Friday with us. It's almost the weekend, and we're going to begin this morning with the latest out of the Middle East. The U.S. military says it boarded another tanker smuggling Iranian oil, intensifying an already tense standoff between the U.S. and Iran in the Strait of Hormuz that has effectively cut off shipping through the critical waterway. Well, this week, Iran attacked 3 commercial ships and seized 2 of them while calling the U.S. naval blockade a main obstacle to new peace talks. President Trump on Thursday ordered the U.S. military to, quote, shoot and kill any Iranian boats laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz and said the U.S. would ramp up its efforts to clear mines that have helped to choke shipping through the strait. And now, despite global economic uncertainty, Mr. Trump said there is, quote, no time pressure on talks with Iran and no time frame to end the war amid this extended ceasefire. Meanwhile, President Trump announced yesterday that the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon now has been extended by 3 weeks, although Israeli Defense Forces intercepted Hezbollah rockets in northern Israel on Thursday morning. NBC News Washington correspondent Alice Barr joins us now with the latest on this. Alice, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. Peace in Lebanon is a key part of the push for a broader deal with Iran. And while there's good news there this morning, NBC News has new reporting about how the Iranian regime may potentially be benefiting off the war.
The United States is just...
President Trump standing firm that time is on his side in the war with Iran.
We have plenty of time, and I want to get a great deal.
Counting on economic pressure from the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports to force Iran to negotiate, though the regime says that's a key obstacle to a deal. The president announced he's ordered the U.S. Navy to shoot and kill any boat that's putting mines in the Strait of Hormuz, and saying the U.S. has total control over the strait despite Iranian attacks on 3 commercial ships that the regime claims is shown in this highly produced video, and President Trump downplayed.
Their military is totally defeated. They're outside of the little wise guy ships. I call them the wise guy ships, the little boats that they have running around with guns in them.
Still, the president acknowledged the turmoil may keep gas prices higher here at home.
For a little while. And you know what they get for that? You know what they get for that? Iran without a nuclear weapon.
Pressing the case for his strategy as polls show Americans increasingly frustrated with the war's costs, and pointing to victories in degrading Iran's military and taking out senior leaders.
They don't even know who's leading the country. They're in turmoil.
Despite those successes, new NBC News reporting finds Iran's regime may have benefited politically from the attacks started by the U.S. and Israel. That's according to a Western diplomat with knowledge of the conflict and 5 Western officials with knowledge of intelligence assessments on Iran. 5 of the officials said the regime is more stable and slightly more hardline now than before the war. Going back to that 3-week extension of Israel's ceasefire with Lebanon that was negotiated here in Washington, it's between the 2 governments, and President Trump said the U.S. would be working with Lebanon to help it protect itself from the Iran-backed Hezbollah militants, who are the ones Israel has actually been fighting with inside of Lebanon. Savannah?
Alice, we also heard a new message from Israel's defense minister. They made it clear that Israel's ready to resume fighting against Iran. How does that play into the U.S. push for peace?
Yeah, the Israeli defense minister put out a new video message yesterday saying that Israel is waiting for a green light from the U.S. to resume fighting with Iran. He said Israel's goal is the complete elimination of the regime and that it wants to return Iran to the Stone Ages. We've heard that kind of language from President Trump, but not just lately, as he's been pushing toward this peace deal. And it's another sign of how there are somewhat diverging goals here between the U.S. and Israel, though notable that the defense minister in Israel is saying right now they're waiting for their cues from the U.S.
All right. Alice Barr from Washington for us. Thank you so much. Well, leaders from the U.S., Lebanon, and Israel held another round of high-level diplomatic talks in Washington Thursday. In a Truth Social post, President Trump announced a 3-week extension to that ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon and said the U.S. is going to work with Lebanon to protect itself from Hezbollah. That's an Iranian-backed militant group that operates out of that country. Well, the president also teased a meeting between Israel's prime minister and Lebanon's president in Washington soon. But back in Lebanon, any possible peace seems to be a world away. More than 1 million people, including more than 390,000 children, have been displaced, according to UNICEF. NBC News national correspondent Yasmin Vasugian spoke with refugees at a Beirut shelter who are among the displaced and brings us this story.
Marwa Yazbek is a 21-year-old student studying medicine. She's from the southern suburbs of Beirut in Lebanon, which was ground zero for Israeli strikes when this war broke out.
The bomb started beside us, actually.
She now lives with her whole family among strangers in a school-turned-refugee camp, trying to study on her iPad while kids play tag in the halls. The school building is housing more than 400 refugees, 120 children.
What is your name?
People fled their homes with limited possessions. Here, there are no TVs. Mattresses and rugs are propped up to divide the space into makeshift rooms. People are cooking and cleaning to keep a sense of normal life.
So is this where you sleep?
Yes, we put them on the floor and we sleep normally.
There may be a fragile ceasefire, but Marwa has no idea when she'll go home.
It's hard to not live now in our home.
She's not alone. Over 1 million people are displaced in Lebanon, including more than 390,000 children, according to UNICEF. Many of them from southern Lebanon, where Israel is holding on to a military buffer zone. Hezbollah, the Lebanese military and political group directly fighting Israel, while designated a terrorist organization by the United States and a proxy of Iran, feelings about the group on the ground are complicated as they're integrated in the community.
You feel like Hezbollah is defending your area, defending your home?
They are protecting us from Israel and from everything is gonna be in the future.
But earlier this week, near one of Beirut's top universities, we spoke to people who felt differently.
Do you think more should be done to fight Hezbollah?
I think it should be, I think the Lebanese government should take a stance and be basically, this time for me it's different from before. I think the Lebanese government should set their foot down and say we should handle it.
Down the road from where Marwa lived, we met a shopkeeper whose business was destroyed in an April 8th airstrike, known as one of the deadliest from the IDF since fighting broke out. Within 5 days, he was back in business.
This country is not called Iran. It's not called Israel. This is Lebanon. No one is allowed to take even a single inch of our land.
Israel says it's not leaving the buffer zone until Lebanon disarms Hezbollah. The people we're speaking with overwhelmingly want to return to their homes, which means they don't want the government to compromise by giving up land.
How does it feel to you to have to leave your home?
It's not nice. Actually, I'm gonna cry, but
it's okay.
But we're strong.
Yasmin Vasugian, NBC News.
Well, a U.S. Special Forces soldier has been arrested and charged for allegedly using classified information to cash in on the capture of Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro. Federal authorities say Gannon Ken Van Dyke, who was involved in the operation, made bets about the raid on the prediction market platform Polymarket. An unsealed federal indictment alleges he made more than $409,000. NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen joins us now with the details. John, good morning. Great to see you as always. This is such a talker. He's facing numerous charges. Let's go through some of them. Unlawful use of confidential government information for personal gain, theft charges, fraud charges. Walk us through what we know right now about this investigation and what we're also hearing from the White House about this arrest.
Hey, good morning, Savannah. It's a roulette wheel of charges here. Basically what we're seeing from the federal government is an argument of no tolerance policy. You've got the Justice Department obviously lodging these charges, the FBI involved. You have Polymarket saying that they tipped off the government to the possible use of inside information here, confidential information, perhaps classified information. And then you've got the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. They are also looking into this as a possible civil suit against the person who's been charged here. So this is a larger issue, and the president alluded to that a little bit yesterday at the White House. He jokingly compared this to Pete Rose, the former baseball player, the late baseball great, betting on his own team when he was a manager, but said that he would look into this matter there. And the White House has told officials there, oddly enough, they felt like they had to, that they should not be getting involved in the prediction markets.
I mean, it's like I said, a talker, because we've also seen candidates betting on themselves on these platforms. It's becoming more and more of a conversation for sure. John, we're more than 6 months away from the midterm election now. New polling numbers out. They are signaling potential trouble for President Trump, for Republicans. And the GOP is, of course, trying to hold on to that slim majority in the House. How are voters feeling about the president right now? What did these poll numbers reveal?
They're not feeling great about the president right now, Savannah. I think there are a few things to look at. Number one, on two of the top issues that have been dominating headlines, that have been dominating his attention, the economy and Iran. You've seen the president's numbers fall, particularly on the economy. About a third of Americans, whether you look at Fox News polling that came out a couple days ago or NBC polling over the weekend, about a third of folks feel confident in the economy or approve of his handling of the economy. I think what's really troublesome, though, for Republicans as you head into the midterms is that if you look back at 2018, which is a year of a huge Democratic wave, right before that 2018 election, where Democrats netted 40 seats in the House, Trump's overall approval rating was 47% in the Fox News poll. The one that came out this week, 42%, 5 points worse than that hugely horrific election year for Republicans.
President Trump has spent his second term, John, working to change the physical space of Washington. We've talked about this a lot. There's this plan for this ballroom at the White House, also this arch that the president wants on the streets of D.C., much larger than, for example, the Arc de Triomphe that a lot of people might know in Paris. The president now also has eyes on the National Mall. Tell us what he's planning there.
Yeah, the big thing, Savannah, is refurbishment of, at least the big thing so far, you never know, there's a number of years left in this term. The big thing so far is a refurbishment of the reflecting pool right outside the Lincoln Memorial, between the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument. There had been some talk, the president said, of a much larger renovation. Right now, it sounds like what he's going to try to do is make the coating of it look a little bit more like a swimming pool with an American flag blue, as opposed to redoing all of the granite. But as anybody who's been in Washington would let you know, nobody would recommend swimming in that thing right now.
So maybe it could use it. All right, John Allen, thank you so much. Thanks. Well, firefighters are still battling massive wildfires in Florida and Georgia this morning. Evacuation orders are currently in effect in parts of both states. At least 8 wildfires have destroyed dozens of homes and charred more than 30,000 acres now. NBC News national correspondent Aaron Gilchrist is in Georgia and has the latest.
An around-the-clock battle against several raging infernos.
Oh, my gracious.
In Georgia, plumes of smoke turning the sky dark. Drivers surrounded by flames as they try to navigate the roads. In Brantley County, the wildfire only 15% contained. After decimating thousands of acres, with winds shifting, more people are now at risk.
We need folks to understand they need to be prepared to evacuate. This is a dynamic fire that's changing.
We couldn't do nothing. It's too late, man.
This home among the dozens engulfed by the fire's wrath. In this area where the fire is already passed, you can see things like this, a mobile home completely burned out, and all around it, nothing but scorched earth. Wildfires are sprouting up across the region, turning communities into wastelands.
All these woods were on fire. They're probably about 10, 12, 13 feet up.
Corey Kempf evacuated with his 14-year-old daughter.
And there were big embers coming down. It looked like we were in another world. Everything was just on fire, and the wind was swirling, and it was insane.
He returned to find his property damaged, but his home still standing.
How lucky do you feel?
I feel pretty lucky. Like I said, it was like a movie. I mean, my heart was racing.
Meanwhile, drought conditions are fueling wildfires across the country. From Florida to North Carolina and Colorado, with this year's fire season only beginning to ramp up.
And there was more extreme weather in the Midwest overnight, with a powerful line of storms spawning at least 17 tornadoes in 3 states. There were scary moments in Oklahoma. You're watching here on your screen. One of the twisters touched down 100 miles north of Oklahoma City. Officials there say a power outage prevented storm sirens from going off to warn residents. And there are reports of damage to power lines and some buildings, but miraculously no serious injuries. And a second tornado struck the neighboring city of Enid. Numerous homes and businesses were damaged. Officials there say there are no reports of fatalities and only minor injuries. And Mother Nature's got a lot in store this morning. Obviously, we've got Angie Lastman tracking all of that and what's ahead for your weekend in our Morning News Now weather. Hey, Angie.
Hi there, Savannah. Good morning to you. Unfortunately, the severe weather threat continues today and potentially into the weekend in some spots. Let's start with what we've already seen this morning, which is this line of thunderstorms. A whole lot of lightning associated with that. A lot of folks across places like Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas waking up to some rumbles of thunder and some heavy rain along that leading edge of that system. You're going to notice that's where we're going to see the best kind of chance for this next round of some stronger storms as the day goes on. We'll see a chance for some general thunderstorms across the Ohio Valley, but this is the area that we're most concerned to see. Again, the hail, some possible tornadoes, as well as those wind gusts. So if you live from Dallas to Tupelo down to Alexandria and up through Little Rock, those are the spots that you're going to want to watch and see some of these kind of thunderstorms developing later today. By tomorrow, that late day threat will be returning for parts of the southern plains. We'll see some thunderstorms across the portions of Kansas and Oklahoma, stretching into Arkansas, Tulsa. You're right in the bullseye of that enhanced risk. We've got anywhere, though, from Wichita stretching down to Little Rock, where we could see some of those stronger storms, and all the threats will once again be on the table. We're not done there. We still see another chance for some of these storms to kind of work out of the Rockies, and another severe threat here as we get into Sunday. It's once again, you guessed it, part of the plains that we're going to be most concerned about. Kansas City on the table for you, in Wichita as well. The tornadoes will be a threat that we'll watch for, damaging hail and wind gusts as well. And, of course, those southeast fires, they're continuing to burn. We've still got some air quality issues as that wildfire smoke works north, specifically into portions of Georgia and South Carolina. I would be most concerned if you do have sensitivity to poor air quality. Places like Macon, Augusta, we'll see kind of a difficulty when it comes to that. And hopefully we can see some better conditions when we go through the next couple of days, Savannah, as far as some additional rain to help folks out there, because we do have that ongoing drought.
And that drought monitor does not speak well for the wildfire season as a whole.
It really doesn't. Yeah, it's a concern. This time of year, we always see wildfires at this time of year. It's kind of this transition period. And so it's to be expected, but of course, not what we want to see.
Yeah. Angie, thank you. We'll see you in an hour. Okay. There's much more to come here on Morning News Now. A major win for medical marijuana. Later this hour, Trump officials move to reclassify some marijuana products as a lower risk drug. What it could mean for public health and the cannabis industry. Up first, though, easing up on the immigration crackdown. The Department of Homeland Security rolls back some of its most controversial immigration enforcement policies. We'll have a look at the changes when we come back. We are back with exclusive reporting from NBC News about the Department of Homeland Security and a major shift in how the Trump administration is carrying out its immigration agenda. 2 senior DHS officials and 2 immigration attorneys said they've seen a quiet rollback of some of the president's more aggressive enforcement policies. That includes ICE agents entering homes without a judicial warrant and arresting people during immigration court proceedings. These changes come after immigration officers in Minnesota killed 2 U.S. citizens, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, back in January, as you probably remember. Their deaths sparked widespread protests in Minnesota and across the country. DHS was criticized for its aggressive tactics and for violating the Fourth Amendment. All that eventually led President Trump to fire former Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem last month. She's been replaced by Senator Markwayne Mullin from Oklahoma. NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley joins us now with her exclusive reporting. Julia, thank you so much. Great to have you with us with this super strong reporting. You spoke with two DHS officials about these rollbacks. What did they say about the changes? How deliberate are some of these changes? How was that communicated?
Well, they're deliberate, but definitely not something that they want to publicize openly. This is something we had to dig for. And in at least one of the cases, it was a verbal communication so that there would be no paper copy of a memo changing this policy. Now, the policy that keeps them from entering homes without a warrant, that was verbally handed down. That is saying that you cannot enter a home, even if someone has an order of deportation, without a warrant signed by a judge. That had been a policy since the crackdowns began in Los Angeles last summer and really ramped up in Minneapolis when we saw ICE and Border Patrol enter homes without warrants. The second piece, entering home or being able to arrest people in a courtroom, that is something that came out in a February 2026 memo. And that was to say that it's okay if there's someone who's considered a public safety threat and you need to go into a courthouse. But this large scale practice that we saw, again, starting last summer, where they would ask the immigration judges who were part of the Justice Department to dismiss asylum cases from the bench and then have ICE ready in the courtroom to arrest people who would come in following the legal process to pursue asylum, that is now on hold. The February date also stood out to me because it predates the firing of Kristi Noem. It really shows that it was those shootings that you mentioned earlier of Alex Pretty and Renee Nicole Good that really set these wheels in motion and showed the White House that the political winds on immigration were changing. And now that is the downstream effect we're seeing at DHS. But not all of their aggressive tactics have ended. For example, they just got a court win that California cannot keep ICE agents from wearing masks, and they are still arresting a lot of immigrants who are going to ICE check-ins, again, following a legal process that go to check in with an ICE officer and they're arrested there.
Julia, separate from the officials you spoke to, your sources on this story, you also asked a DHS spokesperson about these changes. What did they tell you?
Yeah, their response really gets into what we're seeing more of in terms of the rhetoric from this administration. They basically said, since day one, this administration has been focused on going after criminals. They mentioned people who were murderers, pedophiles, terrorists, rapists. They went through, the litany of the reasons why you would want to arrest someone and say that that's who they are still focused on. Now, it is true that they are focused on people who they have list of previous crimes, but by and large, the original set, those over 300,000 arrests that came in 2025, the majority of those are people who had not committed a crime other than the misdemeanor of crossing the border illegally. And as we know, in some cases, arrests were not even of people who had immigration crimes and they were later released.
Julia, quickly, what is driving the administration's immigration shift right now, quiet or not?
It does seem to be a political strategy. I don't get the sense that there has been some sort of change in heart for the president. Stephen Miller is still one of his deputy chiefs of staff, and we understand that he is still very much in coordination with DHS. And of course, he's the one who said America is for Americans and America only. But they've put other people in charge, like Markwayne Mullin, and Tom Homan has a more present job now. And Tom Homan is someone who's always been focused on criminals. It seems that they think that's a more winning political strategy to focus on people who have committed other crimes as they head into the midterms in the fall.
All right. As always, Julia Ainsley, thank you for joining us with your reporting. Well, in just a couple of weeks, Pope Leo XIV will mark his one-year anniversary as leader of the Catholic Church. We're now hearing from his brother on how his historic installation as the first American-born Pope changed their lives, from President Trump to the Pope's favorite candy. NBC Chicago's Marianne Ahern has this exclusive conversation.
The biggest surprise, I think, the impact he has had on so many, let's call them lapsed Catholics, that so many are coming back, giving it another shot.
Pope Leo's brother, John Prevost, reacts not only to what's being called the Leo effect in the pews, but also to how the Pope's words have ignited debate, even with President Donald Trump. The two have opposite views on the war in Iran. However, John Prevost notes,
when some newscaster announced that the Pope canceled a trip to the United States. That's not true. At no time was the Pope planning a trip to the United States this year. So that may have been what started some kind of a problem, but it's just a different of opinion or a different stance on the way they look at things.
Prevost, along with Augustinian priest Father Ray Flores, reflect on what this past year has been like.
We're still brothers before anything else, because sometimes I will sit and say, what are people seeing here? And then I have to remember, this is the Pope. Because I don't see that. I see, this is my brother.
And as brothers, they still speak daily, comparing their Wordle scores, even while the Pope is traveling in Africa.
He usually has it done, and then I do it. Most of the time he wins. Like today it was, he had 4, I had 5. But the Words with Friends, we do it on live, which is like a game of Scrabble.
So many Chicagoans, from Governor Pritzker to families who have traveled to Rome, bring Chicago sports jerseys with them. And then there are those who have been sending his favorite candy.
He had 2 closets full of Peeps, so he does still get stuff.
People, as far as the Peeps go, he has enough.
He has enough, he thinks, to last till next Easter.
For John to see his brother, he must go to Rome. But John does miss those days when Bob would visit each summer.
I need a tree that needs to be trimmed. He'd have gotten out the ladder and trimmed it.
Now, of course, John's brother has many more obligations. And while it's only been year 1, the Chicago-born Pope Leo has attracted much interest.
I think it's his authenticity. It just comes across so natural, and I think people are attracted to that.
Oh, the whole thing makes me proud.
Oh, our thanks to Marianne Ahern for that interview. So cool and humanizing to hear directly from family. Now, the Pope is scheduled to visit Pompeii and Naples around the time of that 1-year anniversary. Coming up, a major health alert for millennials. Doctors are raising the alarm about a staggering rise in rectal cancer among younger adults. What you need to know when we come back. We're back now with a major shift coming to the Trump administration's marijuana policy. The FDA plans to ease restrictions around medical marijuana. It will update rules that were set more than half a century ago. NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson explains the changes and what it means for people who already use it.
A historic day for the business of medical marijuana, used for chronic pain, sleep, and side effects from cancer treatment. The federal government reclassifying it as a less dangerous drug, already legal in 40 states and the District of Columbia. No longer in the same class as heroin and LSD, medical marijuana is now a Schedule III substance like ketamine and testosterone, with a low to moderate risk for dependence. But this has no impact on recreational marijuana.
You still can't possess it federally. That is still illegal. You still can't consume it federally. That is still illegal.
Kim Rivers, CEO of True Leaves, sells medical marijuana in 8 states. This decision, she says, will lower her business's tax rate, but won't improve access to the banking system.
Congress would need to pass a law that gives banks the green light to handle funds that come from state-licensed marijuana businesses.
But there's opposition on Capitol Hill. 22 Republican senators signed a letter to President Trump in December objecting to the change. Arkansas's Tom Cotton was one of them, posting that marijuana is more potent than 10 to 20 years ago, and this is a step in the wrong direction. It will help researchers. Ziva Cooper heads the UCLA Center for Cannabis.
This will help ease restrictions so that we can do the research to be able to understand the safety and the effectiveness of these types of products.
This is not the end of the story. On June 29th, the Justice Department will hold a hearing to consider moving all of marijuana to that less dangerous category under federal law. As far as legalization goes, well, that would take an act of Congress. Back to you.
All right, Ann Thompson, thank you. Well, in other medical news, new research shows an alarming increase in the number of younger adults dying from rectal cancer. It's the second leading cause of cancer deaths in the U.S., and 1 in 5 cases happen in patients under 55. Doctors warn it could become the #1 cause of cancer deaths in younger adults over the next 10 years. NBC News medical reporter Erica Edwards joins us now with more on this. Erica, good morning. I think one of the startling things here, as I said before the break, was, this is a real wake-up call for millennials, like younger people who probably are not often thinking about cancer or cancer screenings. Some doctors have called this increase in these deaths among younger adults a medical crisis. Tell us about what we are seeing in terms of these numbers and why we're seeing these higher rates among millennials.
Yeah, good morning, Savannah. This is an alarming trend. Researchers look back at death certificate data dating back to 1999, finding that the rates of rectal cancer are rising up to 3 times faster than colon cancer among people in their late 30s and early 40s, especially among Hispanic adults. And if this keeps up, as you said, rectal cancer could be the #1 cause of cancer death in adults under age 50 within the next decade. Now, experts don't know why we're seeing this increase right now. These patients generally don't have a family history of the disease, and now there's a scramble to try to figure out whether there is an environmental factor behind this trend, Savannah.
Erica, walk us through the symptoms of rectal cancer. What should somebody be paying attention to? And maybe some things that are sort of specific, if possible, to rectal cancer, because I know so many things can kind of get confusing about what it could be exactly, and when someone should get screened for it.
Yeah, some of the symptoms can be pretty vague, right? Fatigue, bloating, abdominal pain. But there are some other pretty specific symptoms that should not be ignored. And this is when we have to throw the ick factor out the window. Okay, Savannah, let's talk about it. Unexplained bright red blood after a bowel movement or a feeling like you still need to go after a trip to the bathroom. Any unusual changes in bowel habits really should be addressed by a doctor immediately, Savannah.
Erica, rectal cancer is curable if it's found early, similar to colon cancer. What are the treatment options for patients?
Yeah, that's why it's so important to really monitor for those symptoms. The treatment for rectal cancer can be pretty intense, however. Surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, immunotherapies in some cases. All of these might impact a person's bladder, bowel, even sexual functioning. Savannah.
All right. Erica, thank you very much. Important reporting. Coming up, another round of workforce reductions hitting big tech. Microsoft and Meta are cutting thousands of jobs as they lean more heavily into AI. Why they say it's just the beginning of that shift toward automation. That's up next. Welcome back. Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, says it's laying off 10% of its workforce. According to an internal memo first reported by Bloomberg, then confirmed by us here at NBC News, Meta is planning to lay off about 8,000 employees and eliminate another 6,000 open roles. The cost cuts are part of Meta's big pivot toward artificial intelligence. The memo noted that the layoffs are part of a, quote, continued effort to run the company more efficiently and to allow us to offset the other investments we're making. Meta plans to double its AI spending this year to about $135 billion. Here to talk us through this is Lance Ulanoff. He's a tech reporter at Radar's editor-at-large. Lance, good morning. Thank you so much. This isn't the first round of job cuts we've actually seen at Meta this year, even though it's a staggering number. Walk us through which units or parts of the business are really going to feel these cuts.
I mean, look, it's all over the place. There's a lot of corporate, bureaucracy. I mean, I think that, they've been trying to cut back on that for some time now to bring it down. The company has been shrinking. It's still massive. I mean, there's tens of thousands of employees at Meta, but flattening the structure a little bit to simplify things. If you look at AI's impact on the workforce, it seems to impact a lot of entry-level jobs and sort of like the menial tasks and, things where you might have had an assistant with you. Well, you'll have an AI assistant. So jobs like that could be affected across Meta, across Microsoft, across other companies that are making similar cuts, all to sort of readjust the workforce for a new reality.
And we mentioned Meta's aiming to double its AI spending this year. So I guess on kind of a two-part question, when we say that, do we mean that they are planning to double what they spend on using AI and developing and innovating on how they're using it to essentially replace employees? Or is this about those AI spends we hear when they're partnering with companies to really try to get an AI product out in the market? And how do they compare on that front?
I mean, Meta's very committed to AI-backed products like Ray-Ban Meta glasses, right? The glasses have AI built into them that you can talk to. I mean, it's connected to your phone, but basically you talk to them, you ask them questions. They're very interested in putting Meta's brand of AI in the hands of everyone. I mean, if you sign on to Facebook, you might notice how it often tells you, like an Instagram or Facebook, that your friends have started using Meta AI. That's part of the investment, growing that capability to build new models, to build better models that do more cool stuff, takes heavy investment, takes a lot of data centers. And data centers are one of the most expensive things, and you're seeing every company invest that and build it out. So a lot of this investment is toward building products that will arrive in consumers' hands.
We are seeing these job cuts really across the tech industry. Similar things have happened at Microsoft and at Amazon over the past year. Seems the trend is here to stay, right?
Oh, yes. AI is not going anywhere. I often hear talk about an AI bubble. And it occurred to me that what AI is actually doing is collapsing the bubble of sort of overgrowth on the tech sector as far as companies that got too big. It's allowing them to sort of collapse that. AI itself as a bubble is not going to collapse. It's just going to keep growing. There may be a correction here or there, but this is the trajectory that we are on.
Lance, what do you think the takeaway is for someone entering the job market right now?
Well, it's interesting because, the loss of jobs is not, quite happening in the way people anticipated. And there's not massive job loss across all industries. Tech seems to be hit harder right now. But what we're noticing is a lot of entry-level jobs is where it's being hit, and that people are frustrated because AIs are being used to analyze resumes and cover letters before a hiring manager ever sees them. So, what people are looking for, what companies are looking for now are people who are AI literate. So I'm always telling people the same thing. I know it can be frustrating. Maybe you don't like AI. Maybe you don't want to use it, but it's not going anywhere. You have to embrace it at some level, use it as a tool so that when you are trying to get that job and they talk to you about it, you go, yes, I get it. I know how to use it. I know how to make what you're doing better.
It's such an important point, and I think a really good one. And just start getting comfortable, start using it. If you're a parent, your teens are probably using it, so start using it yourself so you know what they're looking at. Lance, thank you. Always great to chat with you.
Pleasure.
Speaking of AI, the use of artificial intelligence in films is a debate that really could shape Hollywood for years to come. But one creator is already putting that to the test. He's experimenting with how the two can work together. NBC News Now anchor Gotti Schwartz sat down with the man known as Gossip Goblin, who may have found a creative path forward.
We're humans. We made it.
They look like scenes from a big budget movie.
The world was dying.
Dystopian worlds. Strange creatures, all set in a distant past. But none of this was filmed on a movie set or animated by a Hollywood studio. It was generated using artificial intelligence. And the creator behind it all is known online as Gossip Goblin.
AI is like a visualization tool and nothing else.
His real name is Zach London, and in a small studio without Hollywood budgets, he is building worlds that sometimes look eerily too real.
So I write the scripts, we use voice actors to voice the characters, we hired a musician to score the film, we have a SFX/Foley artists that are like literally physically making the sounds. It's a fairly robust team and amount of work involved.
He says every scene is an extremely hands-on process, typing prompts, generating images, deleting, rebuilding, and then refining again and again. To him, AI isn't replacing filmmaking, it's changing how stories get made.
This is a new form of storytelling where it's really like narrative first, and we can focus on like the pure aesthetic that we want to convey, the pure narrative engine that we want to kind of create, and the story we want to tell. And we're not encumbered by the fact that like we would need to raise, $50 to $200 million to tell this story.
London didn't start in film. He studied art. More than 3 years ago, he started experimenting with early AI tools, creating a travel writing series about a fictional country. At first, the audience grew slowly, but one small character changed everything.
But this Sunday, I came across something I had never seen before.
I took a walk with my girlfriend in the Swedish woods in the fall, and it was very beautiful out. And then I went home and I wrote a short script about a gnome who found some truffles and, made the video in a day. And that went super viral.
London kept posting short videos, drawing millions of followers along the way.
And so like a lot of the stories are just like very thinly veiled parables or like warnings for the present. Having the opportunity to kind of build out this expansive world through these little 3-minute vignettes is like a great way, to grow and engage new audiences, to test storylines really quickly.
It's writing and it's world building in real time with almost like this collaboration with the audience.
Yeah, 100%.
Then another character unexpectedly became a breakout favorite.
You always hit me with the tough ones, don't you?
It would have never occurred to me that like this particular character of all the ones we've done would have been so popular, but like the audience loves him.
It inspired the 20-minute short film The Patch Right, released less than 2 weeks ago and already watched by millions.
That's where you'll find me, soldering new gods in the gutter.
But as creators like London push the limits of what AI can do,
the whole notion that it's just like I type in movie and it's done, like, fine. Never say never. In 5 years, I'm sure that's going to be the case. But in the interim, I think that's like an important human step, because that's where the real authorship comes from, which is like creating a very specific world.
The technology has become a major battle in Hollywood. It's at the center of negotiations between studios and unions like SAG-AFTRA over how actors, voices, and likenesses can be used. And for many, the fear is simple, that AI could replace human work.
Let's have AI technology help create a better result, not displace people, replace performers, or eliminate the human creative spark and element from all of these projects.
That fear becoming clear with characters like Tilly Norwood, an AI actress who built a huge following online.
Genes are binary.
But London thinks AI won't be replacing human creativity anytime soon.
What's something that AI cannot do that you see yourself and your team doing consistently here?
There's a million things AI can't do. I mean, it cannot, I don't think that it can come up with original ideas. I don't think it can ever do anything that's funny. I feel like there's so much kind of nuance that's lost.
And when it comes to the workflow, it's a different kind of tedious, but still guided by human hands.
It's just like a generate, no.
Yeah, and it's like, well, AI can't
get it.
You can't, because AI like fundamentally can't. And so it's like, it's a lot of back and forth and collaging and manipulating things.
As for whether his work is a threat to Hollywood, he doesn't see it that way, but he is convinced that so much of this will reshape who can be a filmmaker.
I do think that the economics of Hollywood in many cases don't make sense, or it basically precludes interesting things from being developed because it's unlikely for them to recoup the enormous budget. I don't think it'll always be niche. It will become more mainstream, but I think it will remain a tool, and it ultimately comes down to good storytellers.
Good storytellers with AI and even more human imagination. Gotti Schwartz, NBC News.
So fascinating. All right, let's move from goblins to gardening. Houseplants, they come with all kinds of perks, right? They can lower your stress levels, improve our productivity, remove toxins from the air. But that all only works if you can keep them alive. Well, now some students down at Spelman College in Atlanta are trying to fix that by using artificial intelligence to help your plants speak to you. NBC News correspondent Marquise Francis shows us how it works.
If plants could talk, what would they say?
The highlight intensity is burning my delicate foliage.
While it may sound far-fetched, that Victorian voice you just heard is a plant actually talking.
Finally, some attention from fine subjects.
A group of young women from Spelman College in Atlanta have built something they call Plant GPT.
We collect data using sensors, and this data gets sent to our LLM, Llama, which generates tailored care recommendations. These recommendations are then sent to a Python text-to-speech library, which convert the text to speech.
In even simpler terms, using AI and real-time data, the group has found a way to have plants say exactly what they need to survive.
I demand to be watered.
And apparently, people need it. While more than 8 in 10 U.S. households gardened in 2024, one survey found that about 50% of novice home gardeners experience crop failure. And amongst some of the youngest plant owners for Gen Z, that number is even higher.
So many people have plants, but it seems like so few of us actually know how to care for them. Why do you think that is?
We think it's because a lot of people are apprehensive of their plant dying. Additionally, when you Google things online, say you have like a succulent, for example, and you Google things online, you can only get general feedback. It doesn't have specific stats on like how your current plant is doing.
Cue the need for Plant GPT. It's a project more than 3 years in the making out of the historically Black Women College's Innovation Lab.
The inspiration for it came from this idea of, what would happen if you kind of gave your plants some agency in how they were taken care of?
Eric Thompson is the assistant director of the lab. And since 2023, he, alongside 4 current students and 1 recent grad, have demonstrated how collaboration leads to budding innovation.
Really be intentional about how you're engaging in space making, and good things will come organically from there.
So maybe it's time for some fertilization.
Even bigger than household plants and gardens, the group sees PlantGPT being used far beyond homes, helping solve for food insecurity and more.
We hope this project could be in home improvement stores like Home Depot or Lowe's, as well as small farmers and urban gardeners.
In just 2 years, the smart agriculture industry is expected to surpass $25 billion. PlantGPT could be a part of that in a big way.
What would you want young women to see in you and what you all are accomplishing?
So hopefully young girls can see themselves doing this and know the possibilities.
Marquise Francis, NBC News.
Well, now to some potentially good news for home buyers in Texas. House prices are going down in the state's biggest metro areas, Dallas, Austin, Houston. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson explains what's driving the price drops.
Come house/acreage hunting with us.
Ariel and Jake Gottfried are on the hunt for their dream home in Houston. The family of 4 has been looking for a bigger place.
We're just kind of looking for where we could plant our roots forever.
And right now, they're among the would-be buyers in the Lone Star State benefiting from cooling prices. According to data from real estate marketplace Redfin, the price of a home in Texas is down nearly 2% compared to last year. The 7 largest Texas metro areas all seeing declines. The reason?
Home prices in Texas got out of control during the pandemic. There was just so much demand for housing. Developers responded by increasing supply, building more homes. And now those homes are on the market, and that competition is resulting in lower prices for home buyers.
So is it really just moderating?
Yeah, I think what's happening in Texas is more like a correction.
Higher mortgage rates and cost of living also mean buyers are being more selective, something Houston-based real estate agent Pamela Rich is seeing firsthand.
Buyers have more options right now, and they're taking their time. They have leverage again.
She's helping her daughter, Alexis Alada, find her first home.
I'm looking at listings, 1 week, and the next week they've gone down, a few $1,000s.
It's not just Texas where buyers may have the edge. Across the Sun Belt, sellers outnumber buyers in places like Miami, Nashville, and Vegas.
There's just more homes in general to choose from. That gives you more negotiating power.
But while prices may be creeping down, experts say homes there are still far from pre-pandemic levels.
Affordability is still a problem, especially when you factor in the higher mortgage rates. So it might not feel like buyers are really getting the best deal right now, but it is a easier time to buy than it was during the pandemic when you would have had to compete against multiple competing offers.
Welcome news for Texas families like the Godfreys. You guys feeling good about getting your dream home for a good price?
Yes, I am. It's definitely not as crazy as it has been before.
Priscilla Thompson, NBC News.
Coming up, ride of a lifetime. Up next, a young girl battling cancer swaps a visit to the hospital for a trip to the amusement park. We'll show you the special VIP perks she was treated to. That's next. We end this hour with a special visit for a young girl battling cancer. The 9-year-old swapped hospital rooms for the ultimate adventure. Greg Sergwell from NBC New York has the story.
Are you having the best day?
Yeah. Even better than my birthday.
For a few hours, Valentina Umana Alvarez was your typical 9-year-old.
Can I sit with you?
Yeah. Enjoying the rides.
Prepare for takeoff.
Here at Farmingdale's Adventureland Amusement Park.
It feels like I'm on the red carpet saying hello to my fans.
Yes, this precocious 3rd grader from Huntington Station was the start.
1, 2, 3, 4.
The park was open just for her on a day she was scheduled to undergo treatment for her leukemia.
It's just magical, for her to be here.
Valentina's mom says her youngest daughter was first diagnosed at age 3 in 2020 during COVID.
Yeah.
Mom then shaved her head in solidarity, and 2 years later, Valentina rang the hospital bell signifying she was cancer-free. In 2025, however, the leukemia returned.
Even the doctor said that she's a tough girl.
For the last year, Valentina has been undergoing chemotherapy every 2 weeks.
They're going through the unthinkable right now. They have so many dark days.
Sandra White and her colleagues with the Marty Lyons Foundation made this day a bright one. Wow. They handed Valentina 1,800 cards handwritten by kids, each carrying a message of love and support.
This girl has got such strength and happiness for all the things that she's going through. I just want to go over there and just give her a big hug. Adventureland's
Helping Hands charity also donated $5,000 to the Lyons Foundation to help grant wishes of other kids like Valentina.
It feels good to feel loved.
Her chemo treatments will continue for at least another year, but she's facing every day with a kid's enthusiasm and the wisdom of someone a lot older.
Be strong, be loved, and you're always loved.
Our thanks to Greg Sergel for sharing that story. The Marty Lyons Foundation is a Long Island-based nonprofit that helps grant wishes for young cancer patients like Valentina. About 82 cents of every dollar they donate goes towards a child's wish. And by the way, Valentina, you do got a lot of fans on that red carpet. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now, but stay with us. The news continues right now. Top of the hour this Friday morning. Shortly, we will take you to the Pentagon, where moments from now we are expecting to hear from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth after President Trump doubled down on defending America's war with Iran yesterday, admitting he's in no rush to see peace in the Middle East.
They don't even know who's leading the country. They're in turmoil. We have plenty of time, and I want to get a great deal.
The commander-in-chief also ratcheting up tensions in the Strait of Hormuz, ordering the Navy to shoot and kill any boats laying mines across the vital oil pipeline. Meanwhile, Mr. Trump back home facing slumping sentiment among American voters over both the war and its chokehold on the economy, worrying Wall Street and Main Street, all as the Pentagon itself tackles a different kind of conflict, an internal one, shaking up its highest levels of leadership in the midst of a war with no end in sight. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on this busy Friday. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe's off today. At any moment, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, are set to brief reporters on the latest in that shaky ceasefire deal and the ongoing U.S. operation in the Middle East, as control of the critical Strait of Hormuz has once again become a central choke point in this conflict. We have NBC News military analyst Colonel Steve Warren and NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen joining us from this Pentagon briefing this morning. Good morning to both of you. Thank you for chatting with us as we wait, and apologies if I interrupt you once this starts momentarily. John, I'll start with you while we wait. President Trump says there's no time pressure for talks with Iran, no time frame to end the war after the ceasefire was extended. What are we looking to hear from the Pentagon this morning? What are you listening for?
And there's sort of an amazing analogy made by by President Trump yesterday to say he doesn't want to be rushed, and pointing out that the Vietnam War took 18 years. I don't think that that anybody in Washington or in the United States expects this to take 18 years. But I do think that there will be a lot of questions today about what the time frame is and how much it's going to cost to continue to prosecute this war. Already the White House asking for basically $100 billion to fund it.
Colonel, let's bring you in here. President Trump ordered the U.S. military to, quote, shoot and kill any Iranian boats laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. What questions do you have for the Pentagon about that direction from the president, and anything else that you're hoping to hear?
Well, I think the first question that I would ask is, what about the coastal defenses, right? So there's three things that are causing the Strait of Hormuz to be closed. Number one is the mines. Number two is the coastal defenses, missiles and whatnot. And number three are the surface ships that we've seen some imagery recently of surface ships, Iranian surface ships, capturing or interdicting tankers. So I first want to know about those other two problems that we have to keep the straits open. Additionally, more broadly, I'm very interested in hearing what the Pentagon thinks the next step is going to be. They don't often telegraph, but we might get some hints on how they're feeling about control of the straits, how they're feeling. Oh, and here we see the secretary coming now.
All right, Colonel Steve Warren, John Allen, you'll both stay with me, and we'll chat on the other side of this. Thank you so much. Let's listen in.
Well, good morning. Unlike the endless wars of the past that dragged on for years and for decades with little to show for it, Operation Epic Fury has delivered a decisive military results in just weeks. Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, as the president has pointed out, all took years, decades, vague missions, shifting sands, little to show for it. Operation Epic Fury has been laser focused from the very start, as I've said to all of you. Clear mission objectives, and ultimately Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. It's a bold and dangerous mission, a gift to the world, historic, courtesy of a bold and historic president. That mission continues today in this new phase as Iran has an important choice, a chance to make a deal, a good deal, a wise deal. As part of that effort, the United States has imposed an ironclad blockade that grows more powerful by the day. From the Gulf of Oman to the open oceans, our Navy is enforcing this blockade without hesitation or apology. Now, as usual, there's a lot of false information out there. I'll say this, every ship that the U.S. believes meets our criteria, either Iranian ships or to and from Iranian ports, has been turned around. As of this morning, 34 total. Non-Iranian vessels are allowed to transit, and many have, including overnight. Not only is the blockade growing, in fact, a second aircraft carrier will join the blockade in just a few days, but this growing blockade is also gone global. Just this week, we seized 2 Iranian dark fleet ships in the Indo-Pacific region that had left Iranian ports before the blockade went into effect. They thought they'd made it out just in time. They did not. We seized their sanctioned ships, and we will seize more. Our blockade is growing and going global. America's military is unmatched, projecting power, denying passage to adversaries, and protecting our interest at the time and place of our choosing. No one sails from the Strait of Hormuz to anywhere in the world without the permission of the United States Navy. To the regime in Tehran, the blockade is tightening by the hour. We are in control, nothing in, nothing out. Iran's battered military, the IRGC specifically, has been reduced to a gang of pirates with a flag. They cloak their aggression in slogans, but the world now sees them for what they are, criminals on the high seas. They don't control anything. They're acting like pirates, acting like terrorists. They're the ones who lay indiscriminate mines, who shoot at random ships, who killed 45,000 of their own people, innocent protesters in the course of weeks. Their own people. They are the bad actors. The vessels that the Iranians seized in recent days, a couple of them, they're not American ships. They're not Israeli ships. They're just random ships that where they drove their little speedboats up to and shot at those ships with AK-47s. Anyone with a speedboat, a gun, and the wrong intentions can do that. They know that we, the United States of America, control the flow of global shipping, and we know that they know. Their real navy is at the bottom of the Arabian Gulf. It's worth saying again, for 47 years, Iran has been at war with America, killing our citizens, our soldiers, and our allies, while previous administrations looked the other way. The real endless war is the war that Iran has waged on us for 47 years. President Trump is the only president with the guts and moral clarity to finally do something about it. I see it every day behind closed doors. President Trump's fortitude is unshakable, and his mission is crystal clear. President Trump said it again yesterday. We have all the time in the world, and we're not anxious for a deal. And I hear him say it every day in private as well. Iran knows that they still have an open window to choose wisely. As we said previously, choose wisely at the negotiating table. All they have to do is abandon a nuclear weapon in meaningful and verifiable ways, or instead they can watch their regime's fragile economic state collapse under the unrelenting pressure of American power. A blockade as long as it takes, whatever President Trump decides. Because the bottom line remains the bottom line. Iran will never get a nuclear bomb. The choice is theirs, but with this blockade, the clock is not on their side. Moreover, President Trump has authorized the United States Navy to destroy any Iranian fast boats that attempt to put mines in the water or disrupt passage through the Strait of Hormuz, to shoot and kill. Our commanders have clear rules of engagement. If Iran is putting mines in the water or otherwise threatening American commercial shipping or American forces, we will shoot to destroy. No hesitation, just like the drug boats in the Caribbean. It's also worth saying, this should not be America's fight alone. We barely use the Strait of Hormuz as a country. Our energy doesn't flow through there, and we have plenty of energy. Just look at the new global Congo line headed to Texas. A beautiful picture. Europe and Asia have benefited from our protection for decades, but the time for free riding is over. America and the free world deserve allies who are capable, who are loyal, and who understand that being an ally is not a one-way street. It's a two-way street. We are not counting on Europe, but they need the Strait of Hormuz much more than we do, and might want to start doing less talking and having less fancy conferences in Europe and get in a boat. This is much more their fight than ours. On this core mission, America's will is unshakable, our capabilities unmatched. Our blockade is only growing and going global. And as the president said, we have all the time in the world. Iran has a historic chance to make a serious deal, and the ball is in their court. Either way, the War Department stands ready for what comes next, locked and loaded. May God continue to bless our warriors each and every day and on each and every mission. Mr. Chairman, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. Today marks 55 days since the President of the United States ordered major combat operations against Iran. Today and this morning, the Joint Force remains postured and prepared to recommence major combat operations on the order of the President. On April 8th, the President announced a ceasefire, and last week, at the President's direction and on order of the Secretary, U.S. CENTCOM began enforcing a blockade against all commercial vessels going into and out of Iran and their ports. Simultaneously, the U.S. military, in support of the U.S. Department of Justice, was ordered to conduct maritime interdiction operations against sanctioned and dark fleet vessels globally. This operation also began on April 8th. And what I'd like to do this morning is update all of you on those actions and activities. First, as I mentioned, U.S. Central Command continues to maintain a strict blockade on all the ports. We're enforcing the blockade across the board against any ship of any nationality that is transiting to or from an Iranian port or territory. We're closely tracking vessels of interest headed towards Iran and those moving away from Iran that were outside the blockade area when this blockade was ordered. And as everyone saw this past weekend, we're prepared and postured to intercept them. As of this morning, 34 ships have met the U.S. blockade and made the wise choice to turn around. One ship did not, and that ship was the motor vessel Tuska. Over several hours this past Sunday, April 19th, the U.S. conducted maritime interdiction operations against the Tuska, whose crew attempted to breach the blockade line. The Tuska is a large container ship, about 965 feet long, or about the same size as a United States Navy aircraft carrier, and over 100 feet wide. The operation began about 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time when the United States Navy destroyer approached her, and the crew and the vessel ignored warnings. And I've described how the destroyer force is operating in the area prior. Upon intercept and coming within visual range, American forces began to issue several clear and unambiguous warnings and inform the vessel and their crew that they were in a violation of the U.S. blockade and directed the ship to turn around. Over a 6-hour period, the vessel and her crew repeatedly ignored U.S. warnings. And then the U.S. Navy destroyer executed a series of pre-planned, carefully calibrated escalation options, including firing 5 warning shots. The vessel and her crew continued to ignore warnings. And after exhausting all other measures, CENTCOM authorized disabling fire against the Tuska. U.S. sailors warned the crew of the Tuska to abandon the engine room, and at approximately 9 a.m. Eastern Time, the destroyer disabled the Tuska's engine by firing 9 inert rounds from the destroyer's Mark 45 5-inch guns precisely into the engine room and engine space on board the Tuska. Not surprisingly, the vessel then reported issues with their engine, went dead in the water, and began to comply with U.S. directions and orders. At 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, CENTCOM ordered United States Marines to seize the ship. Via helicopters, U.S. Marines maneuvered quickly to the disabled ship, boarded her from fast ropes via helicopter infiltration methods, and took custody of the ship. The ship and her crew remain safe in U.S. custody today. Let me now turn to global operations in the Pacific, and I want to highlight that this is a major interagency effort between the United States military, the White House, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Justice. On Monday, April 20th, U.S. Indo-PACOM forces, in support of a Department of Justice request, interdicted the motor tanker Tiffany, which was transporting sanctioned Iranian oil. The Tiffany is a very large crude tanker, VLCC for short, and is also about the size of a U.S. aircraft carrier and capable of transporting approximately 2 million barrels of oil. At approximately 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S. military forces and law enforcement forces also went to the ship via rotary wing platforms, fast-roped onto her deck, and secured her. After the ship was secured, a U.S. Navy control team embarked aboard the Tiffany, and assumed control of the ship at 4 a.m. Eastern Time on April 21st. A Navy control team is comprised of sailors led by a boarding officer that assumes control of a seized ship in order to secure the crew, the cargo, and the vessel. And disposition of that first vessel is still pending. The next interdiction occurred on Wednesday, this past Wednesday, 22 April, when Indo-PACOM conducted yet another interdiction, again at the request of the U.S. Department of Justice. This time, the stateless motor tanker Majestic X, also known as the Ponix, also in the Indian Ocean. This is again a VLCC, or very large crude tanker. At approximately 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, U.S. forces began the interdiction, again using rotary wing assets to get to the ship, got on board, and secured the bridge. Both ships, the Tiffany, the Majestic X, and their crews remain in U.S. custody. And we will continue to conduct similar maritime interdiction actions and activities in the Pacific and Indian Oceans against Iranian ships and vessels of the Dark Fleet. The actions by our service members and our law enforcement partners demonstrate the incredible discipline and dedication and professionalism of our joint force and highlight the global reach of American combat power. The joint force remains on ensuring the Iranian regime cannot harm our interests or those of our allies and partners. And I'll highlight that Iran has repeatedly sought to offensively and proactively expand the conflict by aggression against its neighbors and its attacks on global shipping through the Strait. To date, Iran has attacked 5 merchant vessels, seized 2 of them that were attempting to transit the Strait. And these include ships that Iran itself had cleared to proceed. Now, as I always do, I want to honor members of the Joint Force. Today, I want to highlight and proudly describe the essential role of our intelligence enterprise and the role that they play in conducting our military operations. The totality of their work is the culmination of days, months, and in many cases, years of work by our uniformed and civilian intelligence professionals. We have been able to do the work that we are ordered to do because America's intelligence force, including our core collectors and analysts, have spent decades searching for every loose thread. From the determination of a particular intelligence requirement to that piece of intelligence being collected in the field by a military or interagency case officer to the rigorous analysis that goes into reporting on that finding, those team members spend their careers answering the incredibly important questions that we must attempt to answer before, during, and after operations. They live in the enemy's mind. Normally located behind the green door or behind the vault door in dark, windowless rooms across the world, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, are world-class intel members from DIA, our service intelligence components, NSA, NGA, CIA, NRO, and in the case of the operations that I've just described, the Office of Naval Intelligence, all work tirelessly to sift through the mountains of collected information using tools, tactics, techniques, and procedures that I'm not going to discuss today. The sun never sets on these world-class professionals, and their goal is every minute of every day to be on the account. And they know the enemy. They know their combat capability, their weapons, their industrial and economic systems, and they know their leaders' pattern of life, where they go, what they think, and what they do. Thanks to their work, we know Iran, and it is an incredible work that they do. Again, none of our operations that we've conducted during my time in this job could have been done without the service of these intelligence professionals. And the distance from those core collectors and those analysts to those Patriot crews who are defending U.S. forces forward or the fighter pilots is incredibly small. Every single day, as their mottos say, they are committed to excellence in the defense of the nation and to securing the future, and they're doing the work of the nation. Before I close, as I do every time, I want to highlight and remember our fallen. Today, I want to highlight the 63 victims of the terrorist bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, which occurred 43 years ago, just a few days ago, on April 18th, 1983. At that time, this was the deadliest attack on a U.S. diplomatic mission, and this was the first attack conducted by Iranian-backed forces on Americans. The suicide bomber detonated a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device out in front of the embassy, killing 63 innocent people, including 32 Lebanese, 14 visitors, and 17 Americans. And among those lost, members of the Joint Force to include 3 Army soldiers and 1 United States Marine. We remember their names: Sergeant First Class Richard Twine, Staff Sergeant Ben Maxwell, Staff Sergeant Mark Salazar, and United States Marine Corporal Vincent McMaw. Today we remember them. We carry on their memory and the memory of all our fallen, and remain grateful for their sacrifice and that of their families, who continue to show us what courage looks like. As we continue to press forward and maintain these operations, the Secretary, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and I are deeply humbled by the spirit, tenacity, and commitment and grit of the 2.8 million members of our Joint Force. The Secretary and I thank every member of the Joint Force engaged in this operation, every warrior who remains deployed or who is supporting from here at home. Thank you to and thank you to your families. Sir, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll take a few questions.
Thank you. In your estimation, have there been increased or decreased instances of Iranian vessels either approaching or trying to breach the blockade the longer it is in effect? And another question about the mine threat. Has the mine threat been neutralized enough to facilitate freer flow in the straits?
Well, to the second question, first of all, we are seeing vessels transiting. There are paths that are open. And part of what the president is threatening is ensuring if there's attempts to recklessly and irresponsibly lay more mines, we're going to deal with that. It's a violation of the ceasefire. So transit is occurring, much more limited than anybody would like to see, and with more risk than people would like to see. But that's because Iran is doing irresponsible things with small fast boats, crafts, like I said, with weapons on them. These are commercial ships, in some cases cruise ships that came through being threatened by these. So as far as breaching the blockade, it's been a pretty consistent. There were a number of ships at the beginning. Then you had the interdiction that the chairman described, where we took out the engine room and disabled that ship. I think that sent a very clear sign that this is not a fake blockade. This is a real, full blockade. We'll use up to and including lethal force if necessary. And that stopped, and other ships have taken note of that. So any ships that have attempted, there's been levels of escalation, but none that far, and they've turned around. Absolutely. Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Chairman. David Zier, Real America's Voice. To follow up on Alexandra's question, how big are these mine-laying boats? Can they be achieved from fast boats? And I wanted to follow up my last week question about as jet fuel stocks in Europe reportedly are only about 6 weeks left. They get most of their jet fuel from the Gulf. Have any European countries reached out to assist in cordoning off the strait and participating in escorts?
I know there's a lot of talks. You saw I would call it a silly conference in Europe last week where they got together and talking about maybe doing something eventually when things are done. Those are not serious efforts yet. We would welcome that. We would welcome a serious European effort to do something about this strait and this passage, considering it's their energy capabilities that are most at stake. I think it's a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call for countries around the world. Either you have capabilities or you don't. Otherwise, you're at the behest of a country like Iran, and the only country that can do something about it is the United States military. Do you want to talk about the mines and the small crafts?
They have a variety of smaller Boston whaler-sized boats. We have forces up there deterring and preventing them from continuing to do that, and we'll continue to do so pursuant to the orders of the Secretary and the President.
But reckless mining like that is a violation of the ceasefire.
To do that.
And very unwise to do. Absolutely. Jerry.
Thank you. So Pope Leo has made some strident comments about the war in Iran, and the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops recently put out a statement suggesting that the war does not fit the requirements of just war theory. And I wondered if the Pentagon had thought about this war against the terrorist regime in Iran in terms of the framework of a just war, and if either one of you could talk about that. And then just my second question would be, the Pentagon recently, this week, gave well-deserved award upgrades to the members of Gulf Company 2-1 Marines who served at HKI and Abbey Gate during the withdrawal and evacuation. I wonder if you, Mr. Secretary, could speak a little bit about that and maybe give us a little bit more in terms of what to expect from this Afghanistan review in terms of further proper recognition and proper accountability.
On the first question, Pope's going to do his thing. That's fine. We know what our mission is. We know what authority we have. We're very clear about that. We follow that. The orders of the president. We've got lawyers all over the place looking at what we're doing and why we're doing it and giving us every authority necessary under the Constitution and under our laws to execute it. So we feel very confident across the spectrum about what we're doing and why we're doing and the legal justification that we're following in order to do it. You mentioned the Marines at Abbey Gate. And what we've undertaken at this department is a historic Afghanistan review. So we have, over the course of months, reviewed what happened leading up to and including the events at Abbey Gate and the disastrous withdrawal in Afghanistan. There's never actually been a full accounting in this department of the decisions that were made. There's been sort of papered over congressional attempts, but never a real deep dive where we brought everybody in to talk about what happened and why it happened. That has happened. That review will come later this summer, and I think you'll find it to be probably the most comprehensive review this department has ever done about a single series of events. And it's because the cascading effect of what Joe Biden did in abandoning that mission the way that he did and that disastrous withdrawal had ripple effects for our military, for our country, and for the world. That's why reestablishing deterrence is one of the core pillars of what we've been doing at the War Department, is because the world looked at that disaster and made choices. Vladimir Putin made choices. Hamas made choices and saw that America wouldn't do anything about it. Houthis shot at ships. They made choices because Joe Biden and his administration were seen as feckless and weak. And that withdrawal was a part of what the world saw, people hanging to planes as we fled. That deserves a full accounting, which is exactly what we're doing. Sean Parnell, our chief spokesman, one of my senior advisors, has been leading that effort, getting to the bottom of it. And one of the revelations was that those Marines at Abbey Gate who showed courage, who were out there exposed, knew there was a threat, nebulous mission, the only gate that's open, did not receive the kind of proper recognition they should have for their heroism. So one of the early results of this Afghan review is to ensure they get the due recognition and award they deserve for the heroism and courage they showed at that gate. Despite the bad decisions of this building and that administration, those Marines acted heroically, and we're going to recognize them for that. Jerry, thank you. Yeah, right here.
Thank you. Michael Casey with O'Keefe Media Group. Earlier this week, James O'Keefe published a story on Department of Army Nuclear Chief Andrew Hugg, who revealed top-secret national security information to a stranger he met on a dating app. Will you defer Mr. Hugg for termination and prosecution?
Yeah, he won't work here anymore.
And given the revelations, will
an easy one.
Will any changes be made to the current anti-espionage training for all Department of War employees now, given this?
Well, we're always on the lookout for CI threats, any internal threats, anyone talking out of school about things they should not. We take leaking very seriously here, informally or formally, which is why some of the reporting done by some of the people in here is incredibly problematic. They're willing to publish things based on classified information that would potentially harm those in harm's way. And we think them doing so is incredibly irresponsible.
We've been listening live to the Pentagon press briefing where Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, have been updating us on the latest out of the Middle East amid this shaky ceasefire deal with Iran. The Pentagon says a second U.S. aircraft carrier will join the blockade on Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz in the coming days. NBC News military analyst Colonel Steve Warren is joining us once again to help make sense of this briefing and that information. Colonel, that's probably one of the biggest updates, is at least some detail on the Strait of Hormuz. I'm wondering if first you can help us kind of tactically, militarily understand the way that the defense secretary has explained this blockade, because he said 34 ships have been turned around that were Iranian ships with oil. One that did not agree to turn around is what was fired upon. But then they're also saying that other ships are going through, including overnight. Of course, that can be fact-checked, what exactly is the traffic like in the Strait. But walk us through how a blockade like this works and what the goal of it is.
Sure. Great question. I think the best way to think of this is really more as a blockade of Iran. And don't think of it as a blockade of the Straits. Think of it as a blockade of Iran. So any Iranian ship or any ship that's going to or departing from an Iranian port, those are the subjects, if you will, of the blockade. Those are the vessels that are being blockaded. So if you're, for example, the Secretary mentioned a cruise liner. If you're a cruise ship departing Kuwait, headed out, to cruise the world, you are perfectly within your rights, according to the United States of America, of transiting the Straits of Hormuz. We're focused only on either Iranian ships or ships that have touched an Iranian port. And I think the other really important thing to note is the global nature of this that the Secretary mentioned.
Colonel, quickly, I'm wondering if you can also just give me your opinion. And by the way, thank you for a great breakdown there. The fact that this seems to be no end in sight. He's referencing the president continuing to say we have all the time in the world.
Well, that's the problem with a blockade, or maybe it's the good thing of a blockade. They do take time, right? A blockade is a slow motion stranglehold on another nation's ability to conduct commerce, right? And so it will take some time for the Iranians to really feel the bite of this blockade. They can't get any goods in or out, but it still takes a while for that to begin to affect the economy. So it will take some time before the Iranians really begin to feel the pain.
Colonel Steve Orrin, thank you so much for listening in with us. And stay with us. There's more Morning News Now right after this. Welcome back. The CDC has canceled the publication of a study looking at how effective the COVID-19 vaccine was. The center's acting director had already delayed the study's publication over concerns about its methodology. Here to discuss is NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel. Dr. Patel, great to have you with us. First, just tell us exactly what this study was investigating, and do we know what it found?
Yes, Savannah, this is a very common, what we call real-world vaccine effectiveness study. It used a test-negative design, which is actually a very standard and widely accepted approach in vaccine research. In simple terms, it looked at people who came in with COVID-like symptoms compared to those who tested positive, and then compared to those who tested negative. So everybody had symptoms, some tested positive, some tested negative, assessed whether vaccines were linked to a lower chance of actually having a positive infection or more serious outcomes like an ER visit or hospitalization. So this is something that we do very often because we have to look at people and see after a vaccine, do they get sick or not, and do they end up in a hospital or not? And that's really what the study really showed us, is that indeed COVID lowered the rate of hospitalizations and actually positive cases.
What was the methodology here, Doctor, and was it common?
Yeah, that test negative design, it's an observational study. So that's the first kind of layer of methodology. And that's very common because, let's be honest, we know that these are studies that you really can't ethically randomize people to, Savannah. You can't say to someone, we're going to give you something that could be a placebo and then let's see if you get sick, because we do know that this is a very safe and effective vaccine. But we want to make sure with all these different variants that these vaccines work against the viruses that are in circulation. So then we do what's called a test negative design. So we're just looking to see, are you positive or negative on a test when you present with symptoms to seek care? That's a way of reducing what we call research bias, because sometimes you get people who might not actually come to the doctor and they're sick at home. This way you kind of make it an equalizer. You get everybody with symptoms, but you know that not everybody with symptoms indeed has that exact virus as a diagnosis. Some people have a common cold and some people might have COVID, some might have flu.
Doctor, so walk us through what we're hearing in terms of it being the publication of this being canceled. Was it the methodology an issue, and is it sort of scientifically sound that we're not getting this study, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think, and this is where it gets confusing, right? I think there have been like these kind of concerns about the type of study, that it's not necessarily robust enough, that there were some concerns about like whether this is the right way to do it, what I described to you with, people who present and do they test positive or negative. These are exactly the kinds of research factors that go into kind of putting together a study like this. This doesn't just happen overnight by accident. We do need to look at these confounding behaviors, prior infections, differences in behavior, who comes to the ER, who comes to present to doctors in the first place. So the truth is that it is appropriate to bring up epidemiologic and scientific concerns, but these are exactly the kinds of factors that the study, as described, has actually handled. And again, I just want to point out that this is a very common type of study when we're looking at a vaccine that has been in the mainstream and that has been used for a very commonly circulating virus, meaning a virus that you can find in many places. So it is concerning that is the reason being flagged for holding this study.
All right, Dr. Patel, thank you so much. Good conversation. Well, let's get to the latest twist in that ongoing scandal that's shaken up the NFL. Patriots head coach Mike Vrabel is speaking out after new photos surfaced, allegedly showing him kissing former athletic reporter Diana Rossini. Vrabel did not address the new photos directly, but did say he's taking some time to get counseling, importantly, during the NFL draft. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock is in Pittsburgh, where that draft is taking place. Sam, good morning.
In the middle of the NFL draft, one of the biggest dates on the entire NFL calendar, Mike Vrabel and the New England Patriots are the talk of the league right now. So when those photos first broke, when the story emerged, Vrabel characterized them as innocent interactions. He said suggesting anything otherwise would be, quote, laughable. Now, in light of the latest batch of photos, Vrabel is singing a different tune as the Patriots are standing by their coach.
Just hours before the NFL draft kicked off, new bombshell photos emerging. One showing Patriots head coach Mike Vrabel and former Athletic NFL reporter Diana Russini allegedly kissing at a New York bar in 2020, according to the New York Post. Another, published by TMZ Sports, is said to show the pair at a Mississippi casino in early 2024.
My priorities are my family and this football team, and in that order.
Vrabel announcing on Thursday he's focusing on his family and seeking counseling, according to ESPN.
I understand that there are questions, but I take accountability for my actions and the actions that caused a distraction to the people that I care most about.
Just weeks earlier, Vrabel saying photos published by the Post showed an innocent interaction, and any suggestion otherwise was, quote, laughable. Now the embattled head coach pulling a complete 180.
My previous actions don't meet the standard that I hold myself to. They don't.
Vrabel did not respond to questions about any of the photos or confirm their authenticity. It comes after Russini resigned from her job at The Athletic last week amidst an internal investigation citing the media frenzy for her decision. Russini has since deleted her X account and was not immediately available for comment. Both Vrabel and Russini are married to other people.
Can I borrow your whistle?
No. 50 seconds. No.
As the controversy grows, the Patriots standing by their head coach, saying in a statement they support his decision to put his family first. The NFL is not investigating the matter.
It is a major distraction for the Patriots.
And NBC Sports' Mike Florio says the scandal is likely not going away.
It started as one thing, and it has grown into something that I don't think anyone could have expected.
As far as where we go from here, Vrabel wouldn't specify how long he's going to be doing counseling for, just that it starts this Saturday. But it is worth noting, in the middle of all of this, he is participating in rounds 1 through 3 of the draft and taking off rounds 4 through 7. Now, the Patriots' VP of Player Personnel said that his expertise is critical in this process. He doesn't plan on contacting Vrabel, but he will if necessary. In Pittsburgh, Sam Brock, NBC News.
All right, Sam, thank you very much. Certainly a talker. Coming up, inflation is obviously on the minds of many Americans. So when Morning News Now returns, we've got some money-saving tips on keeping your groceries fresher for longer, how you can stretch that dollar even further right at home. That's next. We're back now with a look at some easy tricks to keep the food in your kitchen fresher for longer, and that could help save you some money on groceries. Let's bring in our friend, NBC's chief consumer investigative correspondent, Vicki Nguyen. She's on set and gives us more. Vicki, good morning.
Hey, good morning to you. With prices of staples like beef, sugar, and cheese still rising, families are desperate for ways to trim their grocery bills. But a lot of the food we buy actually ends up being thrown away. You know why? Spoilage. Well, now we have the expert strategies for keeping your food fresh to save you a bundle.
It's the bitter truth of groceries. Prices are still sky high, yet the average household throws away more than 100 pounds of spoiled food every year. That's nearly $3,000 in groceries.
Food waste is very costly. Grocery prices are up. What can we do to make sure we're maximizing our groceries?
So one of the easiest things you can do is just use your refrigerator the right way.
Consumer Reports deputy home editor Paul Hope says you can keep food fresher longer. First, know where in your fridge to store it. Start at the bottom shelf where the temperatures are actually the coldest. He says that's where milk, eggs, fresh meat, and poultry should go.
They can withstand really low fridge temps, and it'll actually help them stay fresh longer.
The middle shelf has medium temps, good for extending the life of items like fruit. The warmest spots in the fridge, the top shelf and door pockets, best for stable items like butter, condiments, peanut butter, jelly, and even yogurt.
Yogurt is fermented, so it's actually safer at a slightly warmer temperature than things like eggs or milk.
But what about those special drawers? Hope says the deli bin is great for sandwich meat, bacon, and cheese because it stays cooler. The crisper bin is best for produce, like leafy greens, because it can be set to high humidity, which prolongs their freshness. But
fruits and veggies should typically be stored separately from one another. A lot of fruits produce ethylene gas, which can actually make leafy greens in particular go bad faster.
Oh, okay, so don't put the fruits and vegetables all together.
No, typically don't mix those.
And don't rinse your produce before storing it. Hope says that can actually accelerate spoilage.
When you store them wet, they're going to have that moisture trapped against them. That causes them to go bad prematurely. It can also cause them to freeze because you're adding that excess water.
Strawberries last longer if you remove the stems and store them in a towel-lined, sealed container. And when it comes to bread, bananas, whole tomatoes, and coffee, Hope says they stay fresher out of the fridge.
I thought your coffee would stay fresher in the fridge. You say that is a myth.
It's a total myth. Inside the fridge, it's going to be able to absorb all those odors and flavors from everything else that's stored in the fridge, too. It's not something you want when you actually go to brew it.
He says keep your potatoes in a dark drawer and away from garlic and onions.
If you've ever gotten those green shoots start to grow out of your onions or those little eyes that grow out of potatoes, they're going bad prematurely, in many cases because they're being stored too close to one another.
But what about those sell-by and use-by dates? Surveys show more than 80% of Americans throw out perfectly safe food because they misunderstand those labels.
What should you do when it comes to this date? How quickly should you consume it?
You want to try to have things within a few days of a sell-by date typically, but there's no hard and fast rule. Go ahead and smell it. You know, there's actually some validity to the smell test. Many foods will stay fresh or good long after a sell-by date, or in some cases even a use-by date.
He says to extend the freshness of risky foods like ground beef, cook it first.
If you cook ground beef or other foods like that, you'll buy yourself another few days after the use-by date once you've cooked it.
And if you don't cook it, freeze it.
Absolutely.
Easy ways to stretch the life of your food and the money in your wallet.
And we all want to do that. And by the way, other good foods to put in the freezer: butter, hard cheeses, and coffee. You can freeze your bread and bagels. It's better for you. It lowers their glycemic index so that when you toast them to eat it, they're actually healthier because they don't spike your blood sugar. I hear about this with rice as well. Freeze it, then reheat it. So listen, not only will it keep your food fresher longer, you're saving money, and it's better for you.
Oh, that freezing science is so far over my head. I don't believe it really, except because you told me, so fine. Wow, really good tips there, Vicki. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We finally made it to Friday. That means just one thing around here. We're taking you to Hollywood with your front row seat to the latest and greatest from the world of entertainment. Who better to give us the rundown than friend of the show, pop culture whiz, Brian Balthazar. We are starting your weekend off right in just a few with everything you simply can't miss. Stay with us. That's next. Finally, this hour, it's Friday, which means it's time for your week you can't miss list to look at all the movies and shows that you got to see this weekend. And joining us is entertainment journalist, pop culture expert, our friend Brian Balthazar. Brian, great to see you. I only wish you were here on set with me so I could hug you. Let's start the new Michael Jackson biopic. This is definitely getting mixed reviews. Fans seem to love it. There's some stuff missing from the story that is part of the criticism here. Tell us about Michael.
Right. Well, I will say the thing that people almost universally love is Jafar Jackson, his nephew's portrayal, and the portrayal is pretty uncanny. Some are saying step by step, like identical dance performances, which is great. What some critics are saying, though, is that there are key moments, most notably allegations of child molestation, that are not in the film. Now, what's interesting to note is there were some shots that were filmed that had to be pulled. There are some reports that there were scenes shot at investigators at Neverland Ranch, which had to be pulled when the Jackson estate realized that there was a clause into one of their legal agreements with one of the alleged victims that barred it from being portrayed in a film. So that is one of those scenes that didn't make it in. So what this film is now instead is a love letter to his legacy and his ascent to stardom, which ends just after his album Bad. But of course, anytime you have a movie that's kind of in part done by the estate, you're going to have somewhat of a skewed approach to a film. That's just kind of the way that goes.
Yeah, that makes sense. We got another true story. This is called I Swear. The background here is a man from Scotland who was diagnosed with Tourette's as a teen and then ended up really sort of changing public perception. What should we know?
Right. So this was back in 1989. At 16 years old, John Davidson was the subject of a documentary, and people really didn't know much about what Tourette's was. And I Swear is a reference to sudden bursts and tics of often expletives. So the story is his story of his life, and the gentleman who portrays him has already won a BAFTA award for his portrayal, getting a lot of great feedback and a great portrayal and a very interesting story, to say the least.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Okay, let's talk about Fuse. This is an action one, an unexploded bomb in London. Tell us.
Right. This is an interesting concept. So an unexpected bomb is found in London, and so areas of the city are evacuated. Well, what better a time for some thieves to seize upon an empty city to engage in some nefarious behavior? And of course, now they're going to have to thwart that. I don't want to give away too much, but it's really interesting. What would you do if the whole city was empty? If you're a criminal, this is a good opportunity to seize the moment there.
Love it. Okay, let's talk over your dead body. What do we need to know here?
Okay, this is so interesting. Jason Segel and Samara Weaving, who I could have sworn was Margot Robbie, and this one is incredible. They go on a retreat to a cabin to revive their marriage, but secretly they're both out to kill each other. But then something comes up. There is an event that turns everything on its ear, right? And so the fact is that they kind of hate each other. Will they save their marriage? And will this adversity that they face save it, if nothing else? But this is kind of a dark comedy.
Okay. Ooh, I love that. And that's in theaters?
Yes.
Okay, love it. Okay, now if you're staying in and you want to stream, let's start with the new Hulk Hogan documentary.
Okay, this is interesting. Also, this is with a participation of the WWE, and it features Hulk Hogan's last interview. And often, as we were referring to with the Michael story, there are some things that are glossed over or outright omitted. But again, it's the story of Terry Bollea rising to become probably the most famous professional wrestler of all time. And it is not without controversy and not without scandal. There's a little cherry picking about how much they portray in that film, but it's 3 parts, I believe, actually. And that's a streamer that if you're a fan of wrestling, if you're a fan of Hulk Hogan, you'll learn a lot here, though.
Fascinating. All right, Brian Balthazar, lots to watch. Thank you so much. Great to have you. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now. Do not go anywhere, though, because the news continues in just 60 seconds.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.